Good morning and welcome to the QUADRISE Fuels International PLC final results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll, and I'd now like to hand you over to Jason Miles, CEO. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Alessandro. It's Jason Miles here from QUADRISE Fuels, CEO of the company. I'm joined by Andy Morrison as well, who's dialing in as well. So today we'd just like to take you through a presentation that we prepared to take you through the results, and then obviously answer your questions as many as we can today with time available. And like I say, we're pretty good at publishing the responses as well to all the diligent questions that come in. So anything we can't answer today, for whatever reason, due to time, then we'll definitely get back to you with answers to your questions. So following the usual format, what we've done is prepare some slides just to take you through what's been going on, which has been quite a bit recently, and then we'll answer Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I will start. Take you through a disclaimer, which you can read at your leisure. These slides will be published on the website afterwards as well, or latest tomorrow, if there's a slight delay. So we've seen this slide before. There's really been an acceleration during the last 6 months. Obviously, there's been a very large push for some of these new green fuels. The push for methanol by Msc and others is still very loud. But there's an immediate need for the companies involved in, especially the shipping sector and some of the other sectors that we're now looking at, to decarbonise as well. So the fact that we've got some immediate drop-in solutions as transition fuels is extremely important. We're also doing a pretty good job behind the scenes on some of the RDI work that's going on. So we think, we certainly believe that we're on track to deliver a net zero fuel by 2030 to compete with other green options as well, as an alternative. And those fuels could be offered potentially much earlier, and utilising existing infrastructure in terms of all the tanks and pumps and storage tanks, etc., that are available, as well as the fuel handling systems that are designed for fuel oil. What we're looking to do is design fuels that can utilise all the existing infrastructure and use existing engines without major changes, and ideally be safer as well. And some of the things that we've been working on sorry, just going to move this if I can. Some of the things we've been working on is collaborating with different parties. I think we can't do this on our own, so collaborations are extremely important. We're obviously collaborating together with Msc, but we're also working on other projects with third parties such as Vitoro on new solutions, new biofuels that can be used as a drop-in to our water and oil technology. So there's a lot going on, with the various different parties to bring this all together. And we're getting some good profile, obviously through the work that we're doing with Msc. Obviously that's been picked up by the media. Some of you may have spotted me on Sky News yesterday. So there's a lot of things now, which is very positive for the company. We're getting rightfully our place in the spotlight in terms of some of the transition work that's going on. So in terms of the Msc project, obviously this project has been sponsored by the CEO of Msc, the ship management department, who looks after all their container ships. They're now the largest container shipping company in the world, overtaking Msc. And during the period in question, the financial year, we basically convinced the OEMs, in terms of Wärtsilä at least, that the information that we've and the performance results we've got from the testing that we did with the various different suppliers from Aquafuel and VTT on the Wärtsilä engine, that was sufficient and quite similar to Msol to provide the level of confidence needed to go straight to a vessel test. There was a slight delay in getting the agreement signed, which eventually was signed in July. And as I explained before, that was really to allow for the fact that they were in the process of purchasing the Msc Leandra, which is formerly the Seagull Istanbul. So fully kitted out pretty much for Msol use already. So we've actually had a crew on board this last week, just making sure that everything on the vessel is working and fully functional, and then any additional maintenance work that needs to be done can be done in the remaining months during Q4. We're also carrying out some testing with Wärtsilä in Italy. In Naples, there's some optical combustion chamber work, which basically looks at the spray of bio-Msol compared with Msol, and then how basically how the injectors can be controlled in the engine. So that's some pretty high-tech work that's done in Naples. And then in Trieste, we're doing some wear testing on the bio-Msol to see how that compares with prior experience on Msol fuel, which we expect to be better because of the glycerin in bio-Msol. So all the preparations are underway. The one remaining item is fuel supply, which we're working on at the moment in terms of where we're going to be supplying the fuel, and that obviously wherever we choose to supply the fuel, both the proof of concept and the letter of no objection will then be available potentially for commercial supply thereafter as well. In terms of Morocco, the agreement was signed in June. The plan was then for Msol to be manufactured. We've shipped all of the equipment down to Morocco. I had a number of different meetings to prepare in advance, including having teams on site in Morocco as well, to make sure that everything fitted and was fully functional and ready for the trial. There was a slight delay in getting the Msol manufactured in Denmark. The reason being that we basically planned to commission our 5 ton an hour unit, and there were some delays due to equipment being supplied for that 5 ton an hour unit, which were not foreseen by the supplier. He was getting let down by, I guess, some of his sub-suppliers in terms of, I don't know if people have been trying to ship microchips from one part of the world to the other, but there's a lot of control system delays in control system shipments, which unfortunately affected the startup of our unit as well, a 5 ton an hour unit. But that's now been done. The 5 ton an hour unit was then commissioned as manufactured, the 60 tons of Msol, which is on its way to Morocco as we speak, and bio-Msol is being manufactured and will be shipped as well to follow. So the test will basically be run on Msol, and then we'll do a supporting test at the end with bio-Msol during this quarter, and then based on those results, then we expect to then have commercial discussions with the client and potentially carry out some other trials at their other sites. One being Site A, and then have another site, another facility, which is quite similar to Site B, where we're doing the first test. So we expect to be able to maximise the volume opportunity from the client during Q1 at the same time as preparing for commercial supply initially for Site B. And in Utah, the project is a multi-site potential. We're working with Valcor, who've been doing a pretty good job in getting all the permitting underway. It's taken a little bit longer than they anticipated to get the various permits from the Department of Oil and Gas and Mining. And yeah, they're working obviously with a number of counterparties, including people like Tomco, Petrotech, Big Sky, and Heavy Sweet Oil. So they've got a number of projects that they're working on. The pilot drilling is expected to start pretty soon. Waiting for confirmation of that, and we're due to be flying out there imminently to meet with Valcor again and talk about obviously supply of a unit that can be tied into their oil production that they expect to see during Q4, with a view to then be able to produce sort of fuel for testing and then commercial supply. So those discussions are planned for this coming quarter as well, and it's sort of boots on the ground now in terms of what's happening there during Q4. So there's been a bit of time to actually get the samples as well. The samples I did for the core sampling weren't really sufficient for us to test, and they've been testing some different technologies as well to extract the oil from the sand, which seems to be working very well. So we expect to see their final technology or samples from their final technology during the next few months. And then in Americas, there's been quite a lot of activity. Firstly, in terms of the power plant opportunities in Panama and Honduras. Our agent EMPC are doing a pretty good job at pulling together the various different options there. We're speaking with a number of counterpart power clients in Panama, and one sizable one in Honduras for basically testing of Msol, both blend on board and conventional Msol with residue. So the blend on board is with, the blend on site rather is with fuel oil to see how emulsified fuel oil compares with existing fuel oil. We expect to see efficiency benefits. And then Msol ultimately would be a lower cost fuel oil alternative as well. Obviously, that needs a refinery supply. So one of the options we're progressing is with a large refinery in the Caribbean. And then there's some other options with other existing clients that we've spoken to before in the supporting region. So we've got refinery supply options once we know that the tests are up and running. It's just a question of then marrying up the two and getting the logistics sorted out, which will come during the following months. And then in Morocco, with Redliner, we've supplied a lot of information to the client and awaiting their response. Ultimately, they've agreed that the economics, the work that we've done, is conclusive in terms of Msol at least 2 of the 3 refineries. And then the next step is then doing a refinery trial. We've submitted a load of documentation to do that, and we need to have a meeting on site, which is one of the things we're pushing for at the moment in Mexico. So that waits in the wings rather. And then there are other opportunities that are we're working on it in parallel as well. In various different sectors. One of which is including marine. So I think I saw a question coming in about marine, which I can answer later. But so there's quite a lot of things going on in various different sectors, some of which are supporting the existing projects and some of which are sort of potentially new opportunities as well. But we're focusing on delivery of the core 3 projects plus the Americas. Then in terms of the work that we're doing on future fuels and transition fuels, including bio-Msol, which is extremely important and really underpins a lot of the work that we're doing in the lab now. There's some further work that we're doing to sort of underpin the work that we previously did on bio-Msol. I mentioned the Wärtsilä testing before, which is underway during this quarter. We've got fuel basically being shipped there already, so that's due to happen in the next few months. And then there's some further test plan with Aquafuel, which were again delayed due to parts availability for our Cummins engine. We need some new injectors, etc., which took an age to get to site, but that's now happening this particular quarter, and that's really to enhance the results we've got already on bio-Msol, to sort of marry up efficiency versus NOx benefits. And the other thing is we're doing some testing on conventional fuels versus emulsified versions to test the blend on board concept and provide some data as well to support that option, which is obviously of interest for the marine sector, but also potentially the power sector as well. Some work on other aspects in terms of future fuels. We did some work with the University of Greenwich we did a big study there on algae. The initial cost estimates that they put forward were not competitive with conventional glycerin supply. So there's some further cost optimization there needed, and some potential issues on scale up as well in terms of where the facility is. But you need to do these studies to work out what works and what doesn't. And then in terms of the net zero program, there's a lot of work going on by one of being led by the team that works under me to look at different renewable fuels as well, fuel options. So we're identifying what works, what could work, what couldn't work, and then getting supplies of samples that are being sent to QRF for blending and testing in the lab. Obviously, some of those feedstocks need to go through a sort of health and safety review and audit before they're tested, so that takes a little bit of time. But there's a lot of interest in supplying us with samples to get things done. And then most recently, we signed the JDA with Vitoro. That's really taking, I guess some people probably looked at Vitoro. What they're doing is they're extracting lignin oils and sugars from biomass residues. So these are essentially, fairly large quantities of renewable feedstocks. There's a large amount of biomass available worldwide. They have a technology to extract the lignin, and the lignin can then be used as an oligomer to then blend into methanol and ethanol potentially. But there's also a waste from the biomass extraction, which is essentially basically lignocellulose as well. And the cellulose itself is a sugar, C5, C6 sugar, which can basically be used as an alternative to glycerin or a supplement to glycerin. So we're looking at the CSO, which is very cost effective and abundant, as an alternative to glycerin going forward as well, to offer obviously a larger quantity for instance, the marine fuels business. And the plan with that project is to follow the same development pathway as we demonstrated successfully for glycerin, but using their sugar oil to take it to the point of larger scale use. So this is the outline plan. There's been a little bit of shift due to sort of a few some minor delays during the months, but each of the core projects are live. The agreements are signed, and we have the trials are underway. The planning is underway to get things done either this year or beginning of next, with a view to being sort of commercial supply for some of the projects in 2023. But as always, the world is a very fluid and unstable place, and we can't always control what's happening. We'll do what we can, but we are sometimes at the whims of what happens as well. So, there's not always, we can't control everything. In terms of resources, we've got Phil Hill, who started at the beginning of the year, is taking over some of the burden now from me and some of the others in the team as well, which is great. Andy's done a great job since he's come in since the beginning of February. And then the QUADRISE team that we've got, obviously with some expert consultants that we brought on board or have been on board for a number of years now. We're very much equipped to be able to take the company through to commercialization. The cash resources, we've got 4.4 million as of the end of June, which takes us through to revenue generation the first half of next year, and if necessary, at the current spend rate, we would take us through to the end of towards the end of 2023, if needed, and then obviously there's tax losses which are available to offset against future profits, which we expect to generate as these projects start to kick off. So that's a summary in terms of what we've done. So in terms of the technology, it's very much of the mode now, both the Msol technology, which offers CO2 savings on diesel engines, and also the bio-Msol concept is really sort of generating a bit of attention now, rightfully so, both in terms of cost benefits, but also the environmental benefits as well. And there's definitely been a shift change in what people are looking for now by way of solutions, and also there's an appetite in the various different sectors which a few years ago were hugely conservative and hard to break into. They're now very, very adaptive to looking at new technology, which is a very good thing for us. So as a result, we've got a broad pipeline, but we need to deliver, and the plan for us and myself and the team to get these to revenue generation now during the next few months. So that's really much the focus, and we're not going to deviate from that. Obviously, the transition, sustainability and ESG is something that the company's been very strong on, and we're looking to enhance the sustainability positioning of the company as well, so people can actually appreciate some of the benefits of what we offer. So the more that we can do in terms of getting that message out to the world through platforms that we're getting now through Msc and others, the better. So that's a real focus for us now going forward. So without further ado, I guess we move to the Q&A, if that's okay. It's a bit of a monologue from me. It's a bit weird doing this remotely, but let's get on to the questions if we can.
Yes, Jason, of course, and thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few minutes to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. We received a large number of questions, both pre-submitted and live, and we'll publish the written responses to the pre-submitted questions post-event. But if I may, could I just ask you to read out the questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Sure. I'll take the one at the top, Mark N. Why did the Morocco agreement take 9 months to be agreed, and is the trial a paid-for trial? Yeah, the Morocco agreement did take a little bit longer. I think I explained before. We had a discussion where, basically, it got taken over by the industrial division of this particular company that we're working with, who really manages all of the operations of their facility. So we had to get through the new management for them to get sign off, for them to get basically buy-in to the innovation project that was delivered to them by another department. But since that's happened, we've had very significant take up, and the project has been managed extremely well by the client. So it took a little bit longer to work with the new department, but the new department is really has the remit to get these projects done, which is important. Is the trial paid for? Yes, we're getting paid for the fuel, providing it works, basically. Just checking, you can still hear me all right? Just
Yes, Jason, we can still hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I just something happened on my computer, so I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Andy, do you want to take the next question down in terms of share price?
Yeah, so the question is, share price is close to an all-time low, partly due to the company missing project milestones and moving them from one quarter to the next quarter. This has now been happening for over a year. How do you think continuously missing these project milestones impacts the credibility of the board? And there's another question from Mark. I think that it's undoubtedly the case that the share price is close to an all-time low. I think it's we're not alone in that situation as a small cap company, and undoubtedly, the investor confidence is also at a low point. We are, I think, beginning to turn that around in terms of hitting project milestones. I don't want to be in the position here of making excuses, but everyone knows we were in the early part of the year coming out of the COVID period. We've still got a lot of backlogs in the shipping systems, so very much as Jason's explained. And some of our customers are quite big customers. A month here or there for them is nothing, whereas for us it's very important. And so I think all those things mean that it's very hard for us to be entirely in control of every item on our agenda. And I do think that we have turned the corner this year. We stress tested all the projects at the beginning of the year when I came in, and they all came out positively. That is to say, we said, are we going to do this or aren't we going to do it? And we challenged our counterparties on all those, and they've said, no, we're actually going to do this. And so now we're really as we move from the phase of planning and talking about a project into actually doing them, we have a different set of delays, if you like. But these are delays that are real and fair. I think MSc, for example, they needed to buy the ship. Well, they need to buy the ship, and then they need to get it ready for us to do our trials and so on. So I think that these are operational matters that it's, I would say, symbolic of being on the right track. We are now in the operational world. We're doing business with real customers, and we should be in revenues very shortly. So yes, it's painful. I don't think it's the share price is only a result of delivery. I think it's also wider things. But hopefully we're on the right track. And I think we've seen from the results from the feedback that Jason's had to the Sky interview and so on, the sort of the mood music around what we're doing is much improved. So I hope we'll see that in the share price before too long.
It's maybe taking a question for from somebody else. There's one from Lionel T. What's the chance of not having any commercial agreements signed by the end of 2023? I guess my view, given the progress we're making and the interest from the clients that we've got, is extremely low. But obviously, that's subject to, as always, to the results from the trials, of which we have a fairly high chance of success for those going ahead. But obviously, there's multiple stakeholders involved in some of these projects, so we need to pull all these things together during the coming months. But it's nothing that we can't do. So that would be my response to Lionel. There's one from Quentin B, basically saying, I invested about 2 years ago with a view that QFI was on the cusp of breakthroughs with its 4 major prospects. Disappointingly, this seems to be still the case now. There's a danger that QFI will run out of money just as these are about to come to fruition. What can you say to assure me this won't be the case? I guess, Quentin, just looking at the timing, in terms of 2 years ago, what we've done is we've actually taken the various different projects, which were at a fairly early stage 2 years ago, to a point where we've got clients now on board committing serious infrastructure to carry out these trials. The clients are actually going public with what's happening as well, so they believe in what QFI are doing. And in terms of assurance, all we can say is what our clients are saying publicly about what they're doing. So when you have companies like Msc, saying publicly how they're backing the technology and the collaboration, and also the mood music and the genuine shift in people's interest in terms of decarbonisation, all of which is a theme with the QUADRISE technology, I'd say that we're in very good shape to come out of this. Albeit we do appreciate the share price is a little bit depressed at the moment, as is the AIM market in general anyway, and markets in general. But I think that there's a great opportunity for us in 2023 to offer a lot of value creation from delivering what we're doing.
Jason, can I just add to that as well? I think we all recognise that the current global conditions have never been more favourable for the solutions that we're offering. And as I put in my chairman's statement in the results, I do think that it's from reflecting on Quentin's question. It's fair to say that we're constrained more by our resources than by the opportunities. This is a business where we in a sense, it's quite a lot to it, as you've heard Jason explain, and we cannot effectively save our way to prosperity. So we are very, very much aware of the share price situation and the fact that people have invested at higher levels, and we will continue to be aware of that. And what I'm saying though is that we do have opportunities to grow the business quite significantly here. And ultimately, we do have to make choices. We will have to make choices in order to be able to get to the bigger scale that we want to get to. And we will be careful in doing so to take shareholders with us and on the journey. But we do have to recognise that this is a company that we are constrained by our resources for what is a huge opportunity in front of us.
Thanks, Andy. There's a question coming in from Jeremy N. Have you had any discussions with Steve Bile outside of his Valcor Utah operations, for instance, his Trinidad and Tobago development, with a view to MSAR? And the second question is this tied into the Caribbean refinery opportunity mentioned in any way, or is that not linked? So the refinery opportunity is not linked to Valcor in any way. And in terms of Trinidad and Tobago, we're aware of that particular project, but our focus is frankly in Utah, where we see an opportunity for the low sulfur material, and a low carbon opportunity as well, in terms of a lower carbon oil. So that's our main focus at the moment, is with Utah and not Trinidad. There's a question from Lionel T, in terms of, are you currently being approached by any organisation for M&A activity? following the statement in yesterday's final results? No, we're not. This is a simple answer there, Lionel. Obviously, we have a reasonably high profile now, and we're working with some big companies, but there's nothing specific in terms of M&A that we're talking about. Obviously, we are looking at opportunities all the time, but nothing material to mention at this stage. What else have we got here? Sorry, computer slow down. There's one at the top from Mark N. Are other shipping companies still inquiring about how the MSc trials are progressing? Definitely, Mark. I'm currently in Singapore for the SIBCOM conference. Was previously in Geneva, so there's discussions with a number of different shipping companies in terms of what we're offering, what we're doing with MSc in terms of the the Msol and bio-Msol bunkering, but also the blend on board technology as well. So there's definitely interest from ship owners now that which we're progressing in various different sectors, not just focusing on the container sector with MSc, but also some other sectors as well, and other fairly large operators. There's one from Jeremy N about lignin. Do you envisage lignin being a more readily available source of feedstock than glycerin? Biomass feedstocks have been in the news recently as not being as green and sustainable as they are purported to be. Is this a potential downside to lignin? Obviously, there are a range of different biomass sources, Jeremy, that we are looking at. But in terms of the material that Vitoro are targeting, which is the same as us, we are targeting biomass that would meet the criteria from the ISCC and RSB, who are sort of accreditation agencies, as being sort of fully renewable sources, as opposed to potentially coming from other means. So those are then are on the EU list. There's basically a Renewable Energy Directive 2 with a list with an annex called Class 9A, and things like crude glycerin and some of the biomass feedstocks from renewable sources that are listed there, and then they're available for credits as well. So they get subsidies in certain places. So they're the fully basically. So we're targeting fully green sources of biomass. The beauty of that then, even the renewable sources, they're much more abundant worldwide. And then that means that you've got a potentially renewable feedstock which is not constrained by biodiesel manufacture or fatty acid manufacture, which is where glycerin generally comes from. So yes, there's a very large quantity of biomass available, even of the fully renewable type. There's one from Ian J. Could you explain how the Sky News interview came about, please, and why from Singapore? I think, yes, I think I've explained why I'm in Singapore. There's a big bunker conference or shipping conference organised by the Singaporean authorities here. So it's called SIBCON, and it happens every second year. A huge conference of several thousand people come and attend. So it's definitely a place for us to be. And the Sky News interview came about, I guess we don't really know how it came about, frankly, Ian, but we received an email, I guess, linked to our results being published and potentially being linked to some of the stuff we're doing with MSc. We hit the radar of them, and thankfully we got a good interview with Ian King yesterday. There's another one from any of these, Andy, that you want to take?
Which one are you pointing me to?
Anyone you want.
Okay. So Duncan asked directly about additional funding, and there's nothing we can say about that. We put in our results, and we've had the stress testing of our cash flow forecast. We are comfortable for where we are at the moment, and we're doing everything we can to conserve the resources that we've got. So there's no imminent expectation of additional funding. And as I've said before, if we did eventually want to do something which was to the advantage of shareholders, we would make sure that it was to the advantage of shareholders. Lionel, about the share price, I think I've addressed that question before in my previous comments. Jeremy asked about the progress of using Msar and presumably bio-Msar as a replacement in power generation, industrial applications in light of the current energy crisis. And is there an opportunity in this sector, especially having previously successfully trialled in Lithuania for power generation? We have asked ourselves that question. We do have a few contacts out there, and there are some power stations that could conceivably run on Msar. But to be honest with you, we are pretty much flat chat on delivering the projects that we've got. So we haven't got as far as we could have done on that. It's still something we're looking at. It's probably a crisis actually that's not going to only be this winter. So we will continue to look at that. But the story we've got really, or the message I want to get across, is that we're focused on the delivery of what we have in hand. Over to you, Jason, again.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. One from Mark S. The pathway in Morocco has been a long and tortuous one, and time has continued not to be met. On the promise that the combustion trial will be a success, how confident are you, 0 to 100%, that the client in question have the commitment to immediately progress this to a binding commercial contract with QUADRISE? Well, I mean, all that we know is that intent sits in the agreement that we've signed with the client. So that's definitely the intent, and we've had discussions with them already about progressing, subject to success of the trial, progressing this to commercial discussions. So that's something that both ourselves and the client are stressing are important deliverables after the project is done. That's no guarantee of success, of course, but that's definitely the intent of both parties. I can't say much more than that at this particular stage. Yeah, there's a question about why I'm in Singapore, and is it related to Power Soraya? The reason I'm in Singapore is for marine conference, not necessarily power generation. So yeah, it's not related to Power Soraya, so it's related to marine. Is my reason for me being here. There's a question from Ian J about the Msc Leandra currently on its way to Brazil. When will it go into dry dock? We can't give that information in. That's sensitive, but we anticipate it will happen some stage before the end of the year. Is the current expectations, but what else have we got? There's a question from Patrick F about Power Soraya completing acquisition of 2 AS's combined cycle gas turbine power plant. Basically saying this modern power plant can run on dual fuel. The primary fuel is natural gas, but in case of shortage, it can also run on fuel oil. I would say that although it says it can run on fuel oil, it runs on ultra low sulfur fuel oil or diesel if it does run on alternative fuel. So it would rarely run on fuel unless it absolutely had to. Natural gas would be the preferred feedstock, and I know that they have pipeline gas, etc., that feeds that anyway, as opposed to LNG. So that's not an option for us. There's a question from Patrick F in terms of if we sign agreements for Panama and Honduras for Msol trials, where would the fuel for these be produced? How much fuel would be required for the trials? Would it have to be in the Americas, Caribbean region, or could we produce smaller volumes in Europe for later commercial supply across the Atlantic? If we do initial trials, we can do some trials using emulsified fuel oil as a proxy for Msol first of all, and then on the back of that, Patrick, view would then be for larger scale Msol supply for trials and then commercial supply thereafter. But the proof of concept could actually be done on fuel oil on site. So, and if we did have to produce fuel Msol, we'd more likely produce it nearer the region. And there are a number of refineries and terminals that we could potentially do that using bitumen if we need to. One was from Patrick F. Will at least 2 ships be used for the MSc Lono trials, so the Msol and Bio-Msol 4,000R trials can be run concurrently? That's certainly the intent, Patrick, but at the moment we're focusing on the first ship to get that underway and get the production up and running so we can supply any other ships that might come into that later on. There's another question from Patrick. Is Steve Biles' Green Flame project in Trinidad a new potential project for Msol? Could it deliver commercial quantities quicker than in Utah, since these are old abandoned wells which are being used and reactivated, unlike Utah where new wells have to be drilled? We're certainly aware of the Green Flame technology. So we certainly think it works. But Trinidad is, like I say, as I explained before, is not our immediate focus. Utah is the immediate focus, and oil can flow relatively quickly once the wells are drilled. So we're not really concerned about availability or timing. For one from Mark S, do you expect there to be any delays in concluding fuel supply agreements for MSc? That really depends if there's delay to trials, to the trials commencing, Mark. I think that the key thing is to get the trials underway, which is what we're doing at the moment, getting fuel supply agreements for the trials sorted out first of all, and then I guess then once they're done, then that will dictate the timing of the trial supply for the first half of the year in Q1. So that's live. I can't say much more at this moment in time. There's one about spreads from Patrick as well. The current MGO fuel oil spread is approximately 3 times higher than the previous historical average. Does that mean that the discount of Msol over HFO would be 3 times greater? Could it be 12 to 15% cheaper to buy for an end user than fuel oil instead of the original 4 to 5? And does it also mean the savings for a refinery and QFI's profits would be 3 times higher than previously expected? I mean, yes. The simple answer is that obviously from a refining perspective and in terms of value and resid, it's certainly a lot more attractive today. It's not just the spread, it's also then the current level of oil prices, which are quite high, which also dictate the discount saving. But yeah, so the overall savings for high sulfur resid are extremely high. Low sulfur, a little bit less so because there's less viscosity driving the discount. But the overall price of oil is extremely high. Beyond obviously the refinery savings, there's also the efficiency gains in the diesel engines for the marine sector and some of the power sector. So that drives the saving as well. In terms of what we get as a company, obviously that's for future negotiation. But if we get a percentage of the value added, which we expect to get from a license, then yes, our profitability should be better. But the proof of the pudding is actually on getting the agreement signed. So, but yeah, the observation is correct. Andy, are there any ones that you've spotted that you want to take at all?
Just a comment from one person who said that there's quite a lot of clicking when you're dealing with your computer. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that, Jason. There's another question from Patrick about how Pembrey Miton and Canaccord Genuity completely sold down their positions. Why have no TR1 forms been released? We can't comment on beyond what's in the public domain on that, but there are, as institutions, I think the TR1 form or their disclosure requirements are different from private individuals. Jason, you might want to comment on David H's question, are the low-no tests on MSAR and bio-MSAR consecutive? If so, this means that the MSAR low-no will not be completed until mid-2024. Is that correct?
Sorry, I'm just setting up a mouse so to avoid the annoying clicking. Apologies, I'm in a hotel room. I'll just make sure I've got the David H.
N22.
Are they consecutive? I guess the question is not necessarily. We've already got an interim low-no, David, for MSAR. So it depends a little bit on how the results for a bio-MSAR compare, and then a further discussion with the OEM that's VART, by way of, you know, what sort of guarantees can they provide for MSAR to actually commence that project a little bit earlier as well. So not necessarily are the trials consecutive unless we just use one vessel. The plan is potentially obviously use other vessels if we can do. So to be determined, and a little bit as a result of the POC test on MSAR as well, confirming what we saw before.
And Jason, a couple of questions further down from James C. Would fuel containing CSO, sugar oil, require a further separate low-no? Can you clarify when a new low-no would be required for different ingredients?
It depends a little bit, James, on the results that we get from the CSO testing, comparing with conventional bio-MSAR. So if the results are quite similar to what we've seen with bio-MSAR, potentially not. But so we'd be doing repeating a lot of the testing that we've already done with bio-MSAR with the CSO product. And if we see similar results from the various different wear testing, etc., then it may be, you know, in an ideal world at least, that we can get away with the same low-no if we can sort of justify that with a proof of concept test as well. But again, that's subject to the OEM agreement.
And the one below that, Jason, sorry, I'm handing them back to you all the time. But Julian talks again. You might want to comment on the situation about the energy crisis in Europe and whether there's anything we can do about that. Julian A's question, the one below.
Yeah, we've certainly spoken with PK and Orlen. So we have got a dialogue there. You know, there's talks of Lithuania as an option. Unfortunately, the power company, in its infinite wisdom, in Electra and I decided to get rid of all the fuel tanks. So it means that supplying that particular power station is a little bit more complicated than it previously was. The tanks weren't in great shape, but they decided to demolish them all. So that means fuel supply to that particular power plant is quite tricky, and it's quite reliant on gas now when it really shouldn't be. But they've got an LNG terminal now, so they probably thought that they were less dependent. And so yeah, we are well aware of the Lithuania situation, but there's no real material developments to report at this stage.
And a couple of questions from Paul G, which I could take. Jason, do you genuinely foresee these trials now carrying through this quarter? How many times can project milestones be pushed forward before it gets to the point of being, or beyond ridiculous, should I say? And also, if we don't get commercial revenue sorted prior to the cash runway being exhausted, what's the plan? And I think that it's a good question. Both of those questions are good. And when I came in at the beginning of the year, looking at the project, I was perhaps in the same situation as you, Paul, and think, well, you know, is it going to work? I think what we've done is we've stress tested the projects. We've looked at the global conditions as never been more favourable, and we've got project management plans in place. So whilst there's no guarantees, I would say that we've made our choice, and we believe we can make it work. And I mean, the alternative the alternative plan would have been to stop doing what we were doing, conserve the cash, and do something completely different. But I think, having spoken to a number of major shareholders, and also got the sense from other shareholders that, you know, you haven't been in this for 15 years, only for some new guy like me to turn up and say, let's do something completely different. So I think we absolutely have an opportunity here, and we have to make it work within the resources that we've got. And so as I say, we've made our choice and we're sticking with it.
There's a question, Andy, about M&A as well from Paul. I don't know if you want to cover that one.
It's a little bit of just noticing that one. You mentioned M&A in the annual report, and this question has been asked in the past, but for QFI to really take these bigger projects forward, then you will surely need a huge cash runway. A future buyout in the next couple of years must surely be on your radar if everything goes to plan. There's nothing I could possibly comment on that really, but philosophically, I would say that you cannot run a business to be bought out, really. You have to run a business to be successful, and then if somebody wants to buy you, that's often a good thing for shareholders. So our focus is on taking the business forward. And when we talk about M&A in the annual report, we mean can we make small acquisitions that would accelerate our own business. We're not talking about being taken over by somebody else. I hope that answers that question.
There's a question from Anne Margaret. Is there a risk that Msol will fail the combustion and wear test this quarter? And what would happen in that situation? Question mark. I mean, in terms of Msol, we already know that it works. It's performed very well in 4-stroke engine testing. So for it to fail the optical combustion test would be very unusual. Put it that way. The testing in terms of the optical combustion test is more making sure that we've got the right injector nozzles installed on the engine that are optimized for emulsion fuel. So that's really it's not really a pass-fail test. It's really an optimization test. And similarly, wear testing, we already know that we've run the same engine for nearly 1,500 hours on the fuel without having any component wear to speak of on Msol. So for Msol to be any worse than a water-based fuel would be very unexpected as well, given the amount of glycerin in the fuel. The caveat being there's always a risk with these tests that something doesn't go according to plan and you have to work out what's happened. But that's certainly not what we expect or what Wärtsilä expect by way of doing the testing. But it's obviously a useful thing to have done. So the test needs to be done. We can't avoid it. There's a question from David M in terms of obviously fuel supply. Will the fuel supply contract needed for the MSc trial be announced before Christmas? That's certainly what we're sort of working towards, David. Can't say any more than that at this moment in time. There's a question from Lionel in terms of, do you currently have any prospects that you are unable to service? I wouldn't say that they're core prospects, Lionel. There's lots of opportunities that we can chase if we want to in far-reaching parts of the world. But at this moment in time, nothing that we would say are prospects that would lead to earlier revenue. So we're really focused on the ones that we've got, and nothing's a higher profile than something with MSc, for instance. So there's nothing jumping up like that at us.
The following question from Jake, Jason, about what kind of customers we're looking for in Utah. Is there anything more you can say about that?
Not at this moment in time. And there are obviously power generators in the region that are running on coal that are potential users. I mean, ultimately, the bigger market is to get the material out to the marine sector. So that's really the ultimate goal for the project. But there are some smaller customers more locally as well that we can supply initially.
The question from Mark S. 1033: how is supply for the marine trials going to be arranged? Report just says QFI will supply it, but 25,000 tons times 2 is quite a lot.
Yeah, and that's why we're partnering up with one of the larger fuel supply partners that already supplies MSc. And that's certainly the intention, so that we will they've got all the permits in place. They have the infrastructure there already, like we did with Cepsa, for instance, with Msc as well. So we were with Cepsa with Msc, we were able to supply 1,000 to 1,400 ton parcels every 6 weeks. So obviously the 25,000 tons is done over a period of time. It's not just all in one batch, but it needs a major supplier with the infrastructure and the permitting in place already to be able to deliver those sort of quantities. So we can't do it on our own. Just thinking if there are any pre-submitted questions that came in, Andy, that we haven't answered.
Have a look.
Yeah. There's a question that came in with the green credentials and improved fuel efficiency and reduced harmful emissions of the fuel. Why have you not been able to make any sales to anyone in the shipping industry yet? I think the simple answer to that one is that to introduce new fuels in the shipping sector requires approvals from various different stakeholders, including the diesel engine manufacturers, which is one of the things that slows the implementation of new technology down in the sector, especially when lots of new options are thrown at them. But the project we have with Msc is really for bio-MSAR and MSAR, is really the leading project out there. And if you get a client like that involved, then it opens up lots of other opportunities with other shipping companies, which is the primary reason why I'm in Singapore, and speaking with many different people in that particular sector as well, because a lot of the companies need to basically accelerate their decarbonisation efforts. Otherwise, it will cost them money, and they'll start losing money on their existing investment, which is their ships, if they're not energy efficient.
Jason, just looking at one of the most recent questions, in previous IMC questions, you have been asked if Cepsa are still an option for fuel supply. You replied, absolutely. Is this still the case for supply to Msc in Morocco?
Potentially, yes. The reason I guess I would not say absolutely necessarily for Msc is only that if we're able to supply bio-MSAR to Msc, there's some quite attractive discounts available or credits available for renewable fuels in Northern Europe, in places like in the Netherlands. So it would make sense if we're going to do a trial to take advantage of that if we can. So that might rule them out for initially for marine supply, but not necessarily for Morocco. And certainly future marine supply, that would definitely be in a very good location.
Question, what may be the last one we could take before we perhaps run out of time? Mark S 1047, how broad will the LONO approval be? Will every engine model require a new LONO? What about year models, number of cylinders, stroke length, etc.? Can you give a bit of clarity on that?
We believe, Mark, from what we've heard, that the LONO potentially could be quite broad and cover a wider range of flex engines than just the Flex 96, for instance. Obviously needs to prove the pudding of that is actually on the bit of paper that we get, but that's what we have been discussing. So it would go beyond the engine model that we're testing at this moment in time. So that cover basically cylinders of different sizes, different stroke lengths, etc., number of cylinders.
I've scanned the pre-submitted questions, Jason, and I think that there's some repeats from what we've already discussed, and that we can provide written answers to those. So I think we will be able to cover those off as well as best in that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Jason, Andy, thank you very much for that. I think you've managed to address those questions you can from investors. And of course, as you said, you'll review those questions submitted today and we'll publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, Jason, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's the questions obviously are very, very useful to gauge where investors are at, and we look forward to meeting you all at the AGM. We said it before, we'll say it again. You know, this is extremely exciting time for the company. What we're offering in terms of the various different sectors in which we work in, are definitely of interest. Engaging by the level of clients that we're dealing with today, we've got something unique. So obviously timelines are a little bit tricky to control as always, but we think we're in a very good place to actually get into the revenue generation in 2020, 2023 basically. So looking forward to seeing some of you at the AGM.
Jason, Andy, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of QUADRISE Fuels International PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.